In the depths of space where civilizations rise and fall like cosmic tides, some legends refuse to die. They whisper of the great white dragon of Zarian Prime, a creature so ancient that star maps were drawn around its slumber, so feared that entire fleets would chart courses light years out of their way to avoid its domain. For 3,000 years, this legendary beast lay dormant in the abandoned mining tunnels of a dead world, its scales blackened by millennia of cosmic dust, its pride buried beneath layers of grime and neglect. But legends have a way of awakening when you least expect them. When the Terran colonial survey ship Perseverance received a routine assignment to catalog the mineral wealth of Zarian Prime, nobody expected to find anything more dangerous than unstable cave systems and toxic gas pockets. They certainly didn't expect to find a dragon, and they absolutely never imagined that the key to unlocking one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries would be something as simple and as human as offering a bath to a creature that had forgotten what clean felt like. How compassion conquered fear, how a simple act of kindness changed the balance of power in a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to care. Some say dragons hoard gold, but the white dragon of Zarian Prime hoarded something far more precious and far more dangerous. It hoarded memories of a time when the stars themselves were young, and the secrets it guarded could reshape the destiny of every living being in the cosmos. The dragon was waiting. It had been waiting for 3 millennia. It was waiting for someone foolish enough, brave enough, or perhaps just human enough to offer it something it had long since given up hoping for, a chance to be clean again. The mining scanner beeped insistently in Sarah Chen's calloused hands as she navigated the crumbling tunnel systems of Zarian Prime. The readings were all wrong, massive energy signatures emanating from deep within the planetoid's core, far too organized to be natural mineral deposits. Behind her, the survey team's boots echoed against ancient stone, their helmet lights cutting through darkness that hadn't been disturbed for centuries. "Supervisor Chen," came the crackling voice of Marcus Webb through her comm unit. "These tunnel configurations don't match any of the geological surveys. The mining consortium that abandoned this place 3,000 years ago left detailed maps, but none of this is on them." Sarah paused at a junction where 3 tunnels converged, each one carved with surgical precision that spoke of technology far beyond what any mining operation should have possessed. The walls themselves seemed to hum with residual energy, and her equipment registered trace amounts of exotic matter that shouldn't exist anywhere in this sector of the galaxy. "Webb, are you picking up these energy readings?" she asked, adjusting her scanner's sensitivity. The numbers climbing on her display made no sense. Whatever was down here was still active, still drawing power from some unknown source. "Affirmative, Supervisor. The entire team is getting the same data. Jackson thinks we might have stumbled onto some kind of ancient power grid, maybe left over from whoever was here before the mining consortium." Sarah frowned. The official records showed that Zarian Prime had been a barren rock when the first surveys were conducted. No indigenous life, no previous civilizations, just vast deposits of rare earth minerals that made it worth the expense of establishing mining operations in such a remote system. But the tunnels around her told a different story. The precision of the cuts, the way the passages seemed to follow some greater architectural plan. This wasn't random excavation. This was construction with purpose. "Team leaders, report in," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority that had made her the youngest survey supervisor in Terran colonial history at just 32. "Alpha Team reporting normal readings on Level 7, came the response from Lieutenant Rodriguez. "Some unusual mineral formations, but nothing that shouldn't be there." "Beta Team here," reported Sergeant Kim. "Level 9 is showing elevated radiation, but within acceptable parameters. We're cataloging some interesting crystalline structures." "We've got..." The transmission cut to static. Sarah's blood ran cold. "Gamma Team, respond. Williams, do you copy?" More static, then finally a weak signal. "Sorry, Supervisor, we're in some kind of interference zone. The deeper we go, the worse the comm system gets. But you need to see this. We found something that definitely wasn't in the geological reports." "Elaborate?" "It's big, ma'am. Really big. And I don't think it's a mineral formation." Sarah made her decision quickly. All teams maintain current positions and establish communication relays. I'm heading down to Gamma's position with my science team. Ma'am, regulations state that supervisors should remain at a safe distance from potential hazards, Webb reminded her, though his tone suggested he knew the protest was futile. Webb, if there's something down here that could compromise this mission, I need to see it firsthand. Besides, when has following regulations ever led to a significant discovery? The journey to level 15 took 45 minutes through increasingly strange tunnels. The walls showed signs of some kind of crystalline growth, delicate formations that caught and reflected their lights in impossible ways. The air itself seemed thicker here, charged with an energy that made the hair on Sarah's arms stand up despite her environmental suit. When they finally reached Gamma Team's position, Sarah understood why Williams had been at a loss for words. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber easily 300 meters across and twice as tall. But it wasn't the size that took her breath away. It was the occupant. Coiled in the center of the chamber, so massive that her lights couldn't illuminate its entire form at once, was a dragon. Not the mythical creatures from ancient Earth stories, but something far more magnificent and terrifying. Its scales, though dulled by millennia of dust and grime, still showed hints of the pure white they had once been. Its head, larger than the survey shuttle they'd arrived in, rested on claws that could have crushed a building. And despite the layers of cosmic dust that covered it, despite the absolute stillness of its form, Sarah knew without question that the creature was alive. "My God," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's xenobiologist, "the energy signatures make sense now. It's hibernating, but its metabolism is still active. That's what's generating the power readings." Williams approached cautiously, his scanner aimed at the dragon's massive form. The scale of this thing, it has to be at least 500 meters from nose to tail. The mass alone would require a completely different understanding of how biological systems can function. Sarah found herself walking closer to the sleeping giant, drawn by something she couldn't quite name. As her lights played across its features, she noticed details that spoke of intelligence far beyond mere animal instinct. The shape of its skull, the delicate positioning of what appeared to be vestigial wing structures along its sides, the careful way its body was arranged despite its apparent slumber. This wasn't just a large predator. This was a being of considerable sophistication. "Supervisor, I'm reading some kind of technological integration," reported her chief engineer, David Park. "There are what appear to be artificial enhancements along its spine and head. This creature has been modified, or perhaps it modified itself." "Modified how?" "Neural interfaces, possibly. And these formations along its back aren't natural scale growth. They're some kind of crystalline computer system. If I didn't know better, I'd say this dragon is part biological organism and part quantum processor." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. A creature this ancient with technological integration that their own science was only beginning to understand, sleeping in the heart of a planetoid that had been mined for 3 millennia without anyone realizing what lay beneath. What secrets might such a being possess? What knowledge of the galaxy's history might be locked away in its hybrid biological digital mind? "Webb, I need you to run a full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about this creature's current status. Is it actually sleeping, or is it in some kind of suspended animation?" "Already on it, ma'am. The readings are, well, they're unprecedented. Its neural activity suggests active dreaming states, but its metabolic functions are running at maybe 1% of what they would need to be for full consciousness. It's like it's maintaining just enough biological activity to preserve its systems while waiting for something." "Waiting for what? That's the million-credit question." Sarah walked slowly around the dragon's perimeter, her scientific mind cataloging details while her human instincts marveled at the sheer impossibility of the creature before her. The scales were individually larger than dinner plates, each one a masterwork of biological engineering. Between them, she could see the faint glow of embedded technology, circuits that pulsed in rhythm with what she assumed was the dragon's heartbeat. But it was the state of those magnificent scales that began to trouble her. Millennia of accumulated dust and debris had turned what should have been pristine white into a grimy mottled gray. Crystalline formations had grown over portions of its hide, and in some places the buildup was so thick that the creature's natural contours were completely obscured. "Elena," she called to the xenobiologist, "what would this kind of contamination do to a creature like this over time?" Dr. Vasquez consulted her readings. "Well, assuming its biological processes are anything like what we understand, the accumulation of foreign matter could interfere with its natural regulatory systems. Scales serve multiple functions in reptilian species: protection, temperature regulation, sensory input. If they're clogged with debris, it could be causing the creature significant distress, even in its dormant state." Distress how? Imagine never being able to shed dead skin, never being able to regulate your body temperature properly, never being able to feel anything except through layers of accumulated grime. For a creature this magnificent, it would be like being trapped in a prison of its own making. Sarah stared at the dragon's face, trying to imagine what 3,000 years of such existence might feel like. Even in sleep, there was something in its expression that suggested a deep, patient suffering. The noble features were marred by the same grime that covered the rest of its body, and she found herself wondering what it had looked like in its prime, what it might look like if someone took the time to clean away the centuries of neglect. The thought surprised her with its intensity. Here was possibly the most significant xenobiological discovery in human history, a creature that could unlock secrets of the galaxy's past, and her first instinct wasn't to study it or exploit it. Her first instinct was to help it. "Park," she called to her engineer, "what would it take to set up a cleaning operation down here? Something gentle enough not to harm the creature, but thorough enough to remove all this accumulated debris, ma'am?" Park's voice carried the confusion of a man who wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. "You heard me. This creature has been sleeping down here for 3 millennia, covered in dust and debris. If we're going to make contact with it, and I have a feeling we will, whether we plan to or not, I'd rather it be able to see and breathe properly when it happens." "Supervisor Chen," Webb interjected, "we have no idea what cleaning this creature might do to its hibernation state. We could accidentally trigger its awakening." Quote, Sarah looked around the chamber, noting the perfect positioning of the dragon's massive form, the way the technological elements seemed to be monitoring and maintaining its status. "Webb, I don't think this creature is hibernating because it wants to. I think it's hibernating because it has to. And if I'm right, then maybe the kindest thing we can do is give it the option to wake up clean." She made her decision with the swift certainty that had guided her through every major discovery of her career. "I want full environmental suits and the gentlest cleaning equipment we have. We're going to give this dragon the first bath it's had in 3,000 years. The implications of what she was proposing hit the team like a shockwave. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried in the history of human space exploration: the systematic cleaning and potential awakening of an ancient alien creature whose capabilities and intentions were completely unknown. But as Sarah looked into the dragon's sleeping face, something in her human heart told her it was the right thing to do. For the first time in millennia, someone was offering this magnificent creature not exploitation or study, but simple, genuine care. The dragon slept on, unaware that its long wait was finally about to end. The next 18 hours transformed the ancient chamber into a hive of careful activity. Sarah had called for specialized equipment from the survey ship, and her team worked with the precision of archaeologists and the caution of bomb disposal experts. Every action was calculated to minimize disturbance to the sleeping dragon while maximizing their ability to help it. Dr. Vasquez had spent hours studying the creature's visible biological systems, mapping out the safest approaches for cleaning. "The scale structure is incredibly sophisticated," she explained as she showed Sarah her findings. "Each scale has what appears to be a sensory network underneath, and there are microscopic pores that suggest they're designed for both protection and environmental monitoring. If we can clear away the debris, we might actually be improving its sensory capabilities." Park had constructed a series of gentle cleaning systems, soft-bristled mechanical cleaners powered by minimal energy sources, specialized vacuum systems for debris removal, and water recycling systems that could provide a continuous supply of clean. The water itself had been carefully analyzed and adjusted to match the mineral content of natural precipitation on worlds known to support large-scale reptilian life. "The key is going slow," Park explained as he demonstrated the equipment to the team. "We start with the gentlest possible cleaning, just enough to remove the surface layer of dust and debris. If the creature shows any signs of distress or awakening, we stop immediately." Sarah nodded, but privately she wondered if stopping would even be an option once they began. Something about the dragon's positioning, the way its biological and technological systems were integrated, suggested that it had been prepared for this moment. As if its long sleep had been leading up to the arrival of someone willing to offer it care rather than exploitation. The first phase of the cleaning began at the dragon's tail, the team reasoning that it would be the least sensitive area and the farthest from any defensive capabilities the creature might possess. Webb operated the primary cleaning system while Rodriguez monitored the dragon's vital signs through passive scanners. As the first layers of dust and grime were gently brushed and washed away, the true magnificence of the creature began to emerge. The scales underneath were not just white, they were an opalescent pearl color that seemed to capture and reflect light in subtle, beautiful ways. Each scale was perfectly formed, and as they were cleaned, they began to emit a faint bioluminescence that pulsed in rhythm with the dragon's heartbeat. "My God," whispered Dr. Vasquez, "it's beautiful. Look at the way the clean scales are responding to our lights. There's some kind of photosynthetic or photoreactive process happening." As more of the dragon was cleaned, patterns became visible in its scale arrangement. Geometric designs that spoke of intelligence and artistic sensibility. The creature had not just grown randomly. It had shaped itself according to some aesthetic principle that human minds could only begin to appreciate. But it was when they began working on the dragon's head that everything changed. Sarah was personally overseeing the delicate cleaning around the creature's massive eyes when the first eyelid fluttered. It was subtle, just a slight tremor in the membrane, but in the context of 3,000 years of absolute stillness, it might as well have been an earthquake. "All teams, freeze," Sarah commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have movement." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of their equipment and the increasingly audible sound of the dragon's breathing. What had been barely perceptible before was now a rhythmic movement of its massive chest, and the bioluminescence of its scales was growing brighter. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, the dragon's eyes opened. They were the size of dinner tables, iris structures that shifted through spectrums of blue and silver that human eyes had never seen before. The intelligence in them was immediate and unmistakable. This was not an animal awakening from hibernation. This was a person, a being of vast knowledge and experience, opening its eyes after millennia of forced sleep. Sarah found herself staring directly into those enormous eyes, and for a moment that stretched into eternity, human and dragon regarded each other across a gulf of species and time that should have been unbridgeable. When the dragon spoke, its voice resonated through both sound and some kind of direct neural communication that Sarah felt as much as heard. The words formed in her mind in perfect ancient galactic standard, a language that had been dead for 2,000 years but which her neural implants recognized and translated. "Who dares to wake the Keeper of Chronicles?" The question carried weight beyond its words, layers of meaning that spoke of authority, of vast responsibilities, and of a loneliness so profound that it made Sarah's heart ache just to perceive its edges. "My name is Sarah Chen," she responded aloud, trusting that a creature with such advanced technological integration would have translation capabilities. "I'm a survey supervisor with the Terran Colonial Service. We found you sleeping here, and we thought you might want to be clean." The dragon's head lifted slightly, a movement that, despite its massive scale, was achingly graceful. Those incredible eyes focused on the cleaning equipment, on the patches of pristine scales that had been revealed, on the careful way Sarah's team had arranged their work to cause minimal disturbance. Clean, the dragon repeated, and there was something in the word that spoke of a concept almost forgotten, a luxury beyond imagination. You came here to make me clean. We didn't come here looking for you. We were just cataloging the mineral wealth of this world. But when we found you, covered in all that dust and debris, it seemed wrong to leave you like that. The dragon was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could sense vast processing power at work behind those ancient eyes. When it spoke again, the mental voice was softer, touched with something that might have been wonder. In 3,000 years of sleep, I dreamed of many possible awakenings. I dreamed of treasure seekers come to plunder my knowledge. I dreamed of warriors come to test themselves against my power. I dreamed of scientists come to dissect my secrets. But never in all my dreams did I imagine someone coming simply to clean me. The dragon shifted its position, a movement so massive that dust fell from the chamber ceiling, but so carefully controlled that none of Sarah's team was disturbed. As it moved, more of its clean scales came into view, and the contrast with the still grimy portions was striking. "You are human," the dragon observed. "I know your species. Young and reckless and given to remarkable acts of kindness and cruelty in equal measure. Which are you, Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Service?" "I'm trying to be kind," Sarah replied honestly. "Though I'll admit this situation is well beyond anything I was trained for," something that might have been laughter rumbled through the dragon's voice. Few situations in the galaxy would prepare one for bathing a 3,000-year-old dragon. Yet you attempt it anyway. This is very human of you. Would you like us to continue?" Sarah asked, gesturing to the cleaning equipment. "We could finish the work if you'd prefer. Or if you'd rather we stop." "Go ahead," and said immediately, and for the first time its mental voice carried unmistakable emotion. "Please." I had forgotten what it felt like to be clean. I had forgotten how light felt on unmarred scales. "Continue your work, Sarah Chen, and I will tell you why I have waited here so long." As her team resumed their careful cleaning, working now under the watchful but benevolent gaze of their massive subject, the dragon began to speak. Its voice filled the chamber and Sarah's mind with words that carried the weight of millennia. "I am Velthris, last of the white dragons of Andromeda, keeper of the chronicle of fallen stars, guardian of the memory of the First War. I came to this world when your species was still learning to make fire, carrying with me the complete history of a galactic civilization that had destroyed itself through pride and fear." Sarah's hands never stopped their gentle work on the dragon's scales, but her mind reeled at the implications of what she was hearing. "You're a living historical record?" "I am more than that. I am the survivor of a species bred specifically to preserve knowledge across the death of civilizations. My people were created by the precursors, the first race to achieve true galactic unity, as living libraries, biological quantum computers capable of storing and protecting information even if all other forms of record-keeping were destroyed. As more grime was washed away, the technological integration that Park had detected became clearly visible. Crystalline structures along the dragon's spine pulsed with data flows that Sarah's equipment could barely begin to measure. This creature wasn't just storing information, it was actively processing and analyzing knowledge accumulated across geological timescales. "But why were you sleeping?" Sarah asked. "Why not share what you know?" The dragon's great eyes dimmed slightly. "Because the last time I tried to share the chronicle with a younger species, they used the knowledge to build weapons that could unmake stars. The Zetherians were brilliant and curious, much like humans. They convinced me that they had learned from the mistakes of their predecessors. Within a century of receiving the chronicle, they had sterilized 12 systems in pursuit of what they called galactic perfection." Sarah felt the weight of that revelation as she continued cleaning around the dragon's massive eye. "So you went to sleep rather than risk it happening again." "I went to sleep because the burden of knowledge without wisdom had become too great to bear. I dreamed that someday a species might arise that would seek to clean an old dragon not for what it could give them, but simply because cleanliness was a kindness worth offering. The cleaning continued through the ship's night cycle, and as it progressed, both the dragon and Sarah's team began to relax into an easy rhythm of work and conversation. Veil 3 spoke of worlds that had existed before Earth's sun was born, of the rise and fall of empires that had spanned galaxies, of the eternal struggle between the drive to grow and the wisdom to limit that growth. In return, Sarah found herself telling the dragon about humanity, about their wars and their peace treaties, their art and their science, their capacity for both remarkable cruelty and unexpected kindness. She spoke of the Colonial Survey Service, of their mission to catalog and understand the galaxy without claiming dominion over it, of humanity's still developing understanding of their place in the cosmic community. "You clean me and ask for nothing in return," Vel 3's observed as Sarah's team worked to clear debris from around its massive claws. "This is not the behavior I have come to expect from species that achieve spaceflight. Maybe we've learned a few things since the Zephyrians. Perhaps, but I have lived through the rise of 47 distinct galactic civilizations, Sarah Chen. Most begin with such noble intentions. The question is whether humanity can maintain that nobility when faced with the true scope of what the galaxy contains." As dawn broke over Zarian Prime, filtered through miles of rock to reach their underground chamber, Sarah stepped back to survey their work. Nearly half of the dragon was now clean, its scales gleaming with that beautiful opalescent sheen, the bioluminescent patterns clearly visible and pulsing in complex hypnotic rhythms. But more than the visual transformation, there was something in Veil 3's demeanor that had changed. The patient suffering that had been visible even in sleep was gone, replaced by a dignity and presence that was breathtaking to witness. This was how the dragon was meant to look, meant to feel, not as a prisoner of accumulated grime and neglect, but as the magnificent guardian of knowledge it had been created to be. "Tomorrow," Vathras said as Sarah's team prepared to rest, "tomorrow you will finish your kindness, and I will have to decide whether humanity is ready for the gift I carry." God Sarah looked up at those vast ancient eyes. "And how will you decide?" "I will decide," the dragon replied, "based on whether you continue to treat a clean dragon with the same kindness you showed a dirty one." Word of the discovery had reached the Terran Colonial Command, and Sarah's communication array buzzed with increasingly urgent messages from officials who suddenly showed intense interest in what had been a routine mineral survey. "Supervisor Chen," came the clipped voice of Admiral Morrison through her private comm channel, "you are to cease all interaction with the alien entity immediately and establish a secure perimeter until the arrival of our xenobiology and military specialists." Who was listening to the conversation with an expression of patient resignation that broke her heart. The dragon's partially cleaned form was a study in contrasts, half of it gleaming with that incredible opalescent beauty, the other half still dulled by millennia of grime. "Admiral," she replied carefully, "the entity poses no threat to my team or our mission. We've established peaceful contact, and I believe we can learn significantly more through continued diplomatic engagement than through military intervention." "Supervisor, you are not qualified to make diplomatic decisions regarding entities of this potential strategic value. You will follow orders and maintain your position until relieved." Sarah closed the comm channel and looked up at Velthris. The dragon's great eyes held an expression of weary understanding that suggested this scene had played out many times before across the centuries. "They come to claim me," Veil 3's observed, the mental voice touched with sadness but not surprise. "As they always do, once word spreads of what I am." "I won't let them," Sarah said, the words surprising her with their vehemence. "You trusted us enough to wake up. You trusted us enough to let us help you? I'm not going to repay that trust by turning you over to people who see you as a strategic asset. And how will you prevent it, Sarah Chen? You are one human with a small survey team. They will come with ships and weapons and the authority of your government." Sarah looked around at her team, seeing in their faces the same mixture of protective anger and determination that she felt. Over the past day, they had all come to see Velthries not as a discovery to be exploited, but as a person deserving of respect and care. Maybe, she said slowly, but they'll have to find us first, and this planetoid is full of tunnels that aren't on any official maps. Vasquez stepped forward. Sarah, if we're talking about protecting Velthris from our own government, we need to understand what we're really dealing with. The chronicle you mentioned, what exactly does it contain? Velthris shifted slightly, bringing its massive head closer to the assembled humans. The complete technological and historical record of 17 galactic civilizations, including the locations of weapons that could destroy solar systems, the genetic templates for creating or destroying entire species, and the mathematical keys to manipulating space-time. The silence that followed was profound. Park was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. No wonder everyone who finds out about you wants to claim you. Knowledge is power, and power corrupts. Velthris said simply, "This is why I sleep. This is why I have slept for 3,000 years. The burden of such knowledge is too great for any single species to bear safely. But you're considering sharing it with humanity," Sarah said. "Why? Because yesterday you cleaned me without asking what you would receive in return. Because today you offer to protect me from those who would use me as a weapon. These are not the actions of a species drunk on the prospect of ultimate power." Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had been monitoring their communication systems, approached with a grim expression. "Supervisor, we're getting deep space scanner readings. At least 3 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought, estimated time of arrival 36 hours. Sarah made her decision with the same swift certainty that had guided her throughout this impossible situation. Pack everything. We're moving deeper into the tunnel system. If they want to find us, they'll have to earn it. Sarah, Velthris said gently, you cannot hide a creature of my size indefinitely. And more importantly, you should not sacrifice your careers and possibly your freedom for my sake. With respect, Sarah replied, continuing to work on cleaning the dragon's scales. That's our decision to make. Besides, we're not finished with your bath yet. Over the next several hours, the team worked with desperate efficiency to relocate their equipment deeper into the tunnel system. Velthris, despite its massive size, moved with surprising grace through passages that Sarah would have sworn were too small to accommodate it. The dragon's knowledge of the tunnel system was perfect. Clearly, it had explored every inch of its underground domain during the long centuries of wakefulness before its decision to sleep. They established their new camp in a chamber even larger than the first, one that showed clear signs of having been shaped by intelligence rather than natural geological processes. The walls were covered in crystalline formations that pulsed with soft light, providing illumination for their continued work. This place? Sarah said, looking around at the clearly artificial architecture. You built this, didn't you? The precursors built it, Velthris corrected, 3 million years ago when they realized that their own civilization was approaching the crisis point that had destroyed so many before them. They created these repositories throughout the galaxy, places where the chronicle could be preserved even if everything else was lost. As they resumed the cleaning process, working now with the urgency of fugitives, Sarah began to understand the true scope of what they were dealing with. The crystalline structures in the walls weren't just decorative, they were part of a vast computer network that spanned the entire planetoid. Velthris wasn't just sleeping in a cave. It was interfaced with a quantum processing system that had been calculating and recalculating the optimal path forward for galactic civilization for millions of years. The mathematics are complex, Velthris explained as Sarah carefully cleaned around the neural interface ports along its spine. For each species that achieves spaceflight, there are approximately 10 circumflex 47 possible future paths. Most lead to extinction within 1,000 years. A few lead to transcendence. The trick is identifying which species has the potential to choose transcendence over destruction. And the calculations say humanity might be one of those species? The calculations say humanity is the first species in 47 attempts to clean an ancient dragon without first asking what they could gain from it. Vasquez paused in her work on the dragon's wing structures. That's your test, isn't it? Not intelligence or military strength or technological advancement. Kindness. Kindness, Valthris agreed, and more specifically, the ability to act with compassion towards something that cannot offer immediate benefit in return. This is the rarest quality among spacefaring species and the one most necessary for survival at the galactic scale. As the hours passed, the cleaning continued, and with it, the most extraordinary education in galactic history that any human had ever received. Valthris spoke of the great cycles of rise and fall that governed galactic civilization, of the inevitable moment when each species faced the choice between continued growth and sustainable existence. The Zephyrians chose growth, the dragon explained. They used the Chronicle to perfect their technology, to eliminate all challenges and obstacles. Within 2 centuries, they had nothing left to strive for except the elimination of anything that was not Zephyrian. They burned out like a nova, brilliant and brief. The Celestials chose differently. They used the Chronicle to understand the long-term consequences of their actions to build a civilization that could exist in harmony with the galaxy's natural cycles. They survived for 50,000 years before ascending to a form of existence beyond physical matter. What about the precursors? Sarah asked. What happened to them? The precursors achieved something unprecedented. They saw the pattern. The endless cycle of species rising, gaining power, and either destroying themselves or others, and they chose to break it. Instead of using their ultimate knowledge to dominate, they used it to create us, the Chronicle Keepers. Then they voluntarily reduced themselves back to a pre-technological state, spreading themselves across 100 worlds to live simple lives in harmony with natural systems. They understood that ultimate power is ultimately corrupting, so they chose wisdom over power. Long-term stability over short-term dominance. It is the rarest choice in the galaxy and the one that determines whether a species achieves true transcendence or simply another form of extinction. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the tunnels, interrupting their conversation. Rodriguez's scanner showed multiple energy signatures moving through the upper levels of the tunnel system. They're using seismic charges to map the passages, he reported. Military standard search patterns. They'll find us eventually. Sarah looked up at Valthris, seeing in those ancient eyes a sadness that spoke of too many similar endings. They'll want to take you back to Earth, won't they? Study you, extract the Chronicle, turn you into a weapon. They will try, Valthris confirmed, and I will resist and many will die and the cycle will continue as it has for 3 million years. Unless what? The dragon's voice grew thoughtful and Sarah sensed vast calculations being performed in the hybrid biological quantum computer of its mind. Unless we give them a demonstration of what the Chronicle can truly offer. Sarah Chen, are you prepared to make a choice that will determine the future of your entire species? Sarah paused in her cleaning, meeting those enormous ancient eyes directly. Around her, her team waited in silence, understanding that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered for as long as humanity survived. What choice, she asked. The choice the precursors made. The choice to trust that kindness is stronger than power, that wisdom is more valuable than weapons. The choice to prove that humanity is ready for transcendence not through force but through compassion. The explosions were getting closer now, and Sarah could hear the distant sound of military voices echoing through the tunnels. In a matter of hours, possibly less, they would be found. The moment of decision was approaching, and Sarah realized that everything, not just her own fate, but the entire future relationship between humanity and the vast community of galactic intelligence, depended on what happened next. "Tell me what you need me to do," she said, and resumed cleaning the dragon's scales with steady, gentle strokes. The decision came not as a grand moment of revelation, but as a quiet choice made while Sarah carefully cleaned the intricate scale patterns around Valthris's eyes. The dragon had explained what it wanted to attempt, a direct neural interface that would allow Sarah to experience a fragment of the Chronicle. not as raw data but as lived memory. If you can witness the fall of the Zephyrians through the consciousness of one who was there, Veil-Thris had said, and still choose compassion over conquest, then your species will have demonstrated something unprecedented in galactic history. The human brain wasn't designed to process the kind of information density that the Chronicle contained. There was a significant chance that the interface would cause permanent psychological damage or death. But as the sound of military search teams grew closer, Sarah realized it might be their only chance to prove that humanity deserved something better than the cycle of destruction that had claimed so many species before them.
"I need you to understand," she told her team as they made the final preparations. "This isn't just about us anymore."
If Veil-Thris is right, what we do here will determine whether humanity gets the chance to learn from the mistakes of every civilization that came before us, or whether we're condemned to repeat them. Vasquez was connecting the neural interface cables with the precision of a surgeon, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Sarah, the readings from this system are unlike anything in our medical databases. We have no idea what the long-term effects might be." "Then we'll find out together," Sarah replied, settling into the interface chair that Park had constructed from their survey equipment and components cannibalized from the ancient precursor technology around them. The neural connection, when it came, was like diving into an ocean of light and memory that stretched across geological timescales. For a moment, Sarah's consciousness expanded to encompass perspectives she had never imagined possible. The view from space of entire civilizations rising and falling, the mathematics of social evolution played out across millions of worlds. Then the vision narrowed, focusing on a single world, a single moment in galactic history that Veil-Thris wanted her to understand. She was standing on the surface of Zephyr Prime, but experiencing it through the consciousness of a younger Veil-Thris, a dragon not yet burdened by millennia of disappointment. The Zephyrian capital city stretched to the horizon, its crystalline spires reaching toward the stars with an architectural beauty that took her breath away. The beings around her were tall and graceful, their skin shifting through spectrums of color as they communicated through bioluminescent patterns as well as speech. "Honored Chronicle Keeper," said the Zephyrian leader, a being whose presence radiated intelligence and what seemed like genuine wisdom. "Our species has learned from the mistakes of those who came before us. We will not repeat the errors of the Andromedans or the Voidwalkers. We seek not domination, but understanding." Sarah watched through Veil-Thris's eyes as the dragon shared the chronicle, not all at once, but carefully, gradually, beginning with the mathematical principles that governed sustainable galactic civilization. The Zephyrians received each revelation with apparent reverence and wisdom, using the knowledge to create technologies that seemed to promise a golden age of peace and prosperity. For 50 years it worked. Zephyrian civilization flourished in ways that seemed to validate their claims of having transcended the destructive patterns of their predecessors. Their art achieved new heights of beauty, their science unlocked secrets of the universe that had remained hidden for millennia. Their society seemed to have found the perfect balance between individual freedom and collective responsibility. But then came the first signs of the change that had destroyed so many species before them. It started with the elimination of inefficiencies in their society, outdated cultural practices that didn't contribute to optimal resource utilization, art forms that didn't serve clear educational purposes, individuals whose genetic patterns fell outside the newly optimized norms. Sarah felt Veil-Thris's growing alarm as the Zephyrians began to apply the same ruthless optimization to other species. They offered improvements to their neighbors, genetic modifications, technological upgrades, social restructuring that would make other civilizations more efficient, more perfect, more like the Zephyrians themselves. When some species declined these improvements, the Zephyrians were genuinely puzzled. How could any rational being choose inefficiency over optimization? How could they prefer their flawed, chaotic existence over the perfect harmony that Zephyrian science could provide? The first planet was sterilized not out of malice, but out of what the Zephyrians genuinely believed was mercy. Rather than allow an entire world to continue suffering under the burden of genetic imperfection and social inefficiency, they used chronicle-derived weapons to reduce it to its component atoms, then rebuilt it according to optimal parameters. They believed they were saving us. Velthrus's voice echoed through the memory, filled with a pain that had endured for 3,000 years. Each world they destroyed, each species they improved out of existence, they did it with tears in their eyes and love in their hearts. They had achieved the ultimate corruption, evil that believed itself to be good. The memory shifted, showing Sarah the final confrontation between Velthris and the Zephyrian leadership as their perfect civilization prepared to export its optimization to the entire galaxy. Chronicle Keeper, said the same leader who had once promised wisdom and restraint, though his bioluminescent patterns now pulsed with the cold light of absolute certainty, you gave us the tools to end suffering, to eliminate chaos, to perfect the galaxy. Why do you now resist our work? Because perfection is death, Velthris had replied. Because the chaos you seek to eliminate is the foundation of growth, of change, of the possibility of becoming something greater than what you are now. We are what every species should become. You are what every species becomes when it mistakes power for wisdom, when it believes that the ability to destroy imperfection is the same as the ability to create perfection. The memory ended with Velthris fleeing the burning ruins of Zephyr Prime, carrying the Chronicle away from yet another species that had used ultimate knowledge to achieve ultimate folly. Sarah felt the weight of that failure, the crushing responsibility of carrying information that could save or damn anyone who received it. But the interface wasn't finished. Velthris had one more memory to share, this one recent, immediate, and filled with a hope that the dragon was still afraid to fully acknowledge. Sarah found herself seeing her own actions through Velthris's perspective, the moment when she had chosen to clean a dirty dragon rather than immediately interrogate it for its secrets, the patience and care her team had shown in their work, the way they had continued to treat Velthris as a person deserving of respect even after learning what it represented. Most importantly, she saw the choice her team was making right now. The decision to protect Velthris from their own government, not for what they could gain, but simply because it was the right thing to do. Do you understand now? Velthris asked as Sarah's consciousness returned to her own body, the interface cables still humming with residual energy. Do you see why I have waited so long to trust again? Around her, she could see her team waiting anxiously, monitors showing that she had been interfaced with the Chronicle for over 2 hours, though it had felt like days. I understand, she said. But I also understand something else. We're not the Zephyrians. We're not perfect, we're not optimized, and we make mistakes constantly. But we're also capable of cleaning a dragon without expecting anything in return. And that, Velthris said, is why I am prepared to offer humanity something that I have offered no species in 3,000 years, not the Chronicle itself. That burden is still too great for any single species to bear. But partnership, guidance, the chance to learn wisdom alongside power, to grow into galactic citizenship gradually rather than all at once. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the tunnels, accompanied by the distinctive whine of military-grade energy weapons charging. Sarah's communication array crackled with incoming messages from Admiral Morrison demanding immediate surrender and cooperation. Sarah, Webb said urgently, they're less than 10 minutes away from our position. We need to make a decision about how we're going to handle this. Sarah looked up at Velthris, seeing in those ancient eyes a trust that the dragon was still learning to feel again. The choice was clear, but it would require a leap of faith that went against every instinct of self-preservation and career advancement she had ever developed. Velthris, she said, I need you to do something that might seem impossible. I need you to trust not just me and my team, but the entire human species. Can you do that? What do you have in mind? Sarah smiled, feeling a certainty that came not from calculation, but from something deeper and more fundamentally human. I want you to meet Admiral Morrison. But not as a prisoner or a strategic asset. I want you to meet him as an equal, as a representative of the galactic community that humanity is seeking to join. I want you to judge for yourself whether we're ready for that responsibility. And if I judge that you are not ready? Sarah resumed cleaning the dragon's scales, her movements steady and gentle despite the approaching crisis. Then we'll keep trying until we are. Because that's what humans do. We keep trying even when we fail, even when we make mistakes. Especially then. Veilthris was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could sense vast calculations being performed in its hybrid biological quantum mind. When it finally spoke, the mental voice carried a note of something that might have been hope. Very well, Sarah Chen. Let us see if your Admiral Morrison is the kind of human who would choose to clean a dragon, or the kind who would choose to claim one. The footsteps were getting closer now, and Sarah could hear voices calling her name through the tunnels. In a few minutes, she would face the most important first contact in human history, not between species, but between different approaches to power and knowledge and responsibility. She continued cleaning Veilthris's scales, her hands steady and sure, preparing them both for a conversation that would determine the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Morrison entered the chamber like a man prepared for war, his tactical team spreading out in perfect formation, weapons trained on Veilthris despite the obvious futility of small arms against a creature of such massive scale. Sarah had positioned herself between the military force and the dragon. Still holding her cleaning equipment, her team arranged around her in a protective formation that was more symbolic than practical. "Supervisor Chen," Morrison barked, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to immediate obedience, "you are in violation of direct orders from Colonial Command. You will step away from the alien entity and submit to debriefing immediately. Admiral, I'd like to introduce you to Veilthris, Chronicle Keeper of the Andromeda White Dragons, Guardian of the Memory of the First War, and quite possibly the most important person you'll ever meet." Morrison's eyes flicked to the dragon, taking in the massive scale of the creature, the obvious intelligence in its ancient eyes, the technological integration that made his weapons seem like toys by comparison. But when he spoke, it was with the same tone of absolute authority. "The alien entity is a strategic asset of the Terran Colonial Administration. It will be transferred to Earth for proper study and classification." Veilthris spoke for the first time, its mental voice reaching every person in the chamber with the weight of millennia behind it. "Admiral Morrison, I am not an entity or an asset. I am a person, the last survivor of a species created to preserve knowledge across the death of civilizations. Your weapons cannot harm me, your authority has no meaning to me, and your intentions toward me are precisely what I have come to expect from young species drunk on their first taste of galactic power." Morrison stepped back involuntarily, the mental communication clearly taking him by surprise. But he recovered quickly, his military training overriding his shock. "Whatever you are, you represent technology and information that could be vital to human security. You will cooperate with Terran authorities." "Will I?" Veilthris asked, and suddenly the chamber was filled with a presence that made the air itself seem heavier. "Admiral, I have witnessed the rise and fall of 47 galactic civilizations. I have seen species far more advanced than yours discover the secrets of reality itself, only to use that knowledge to destroy themselves and everyone around them. What makes you believe that humanity deserves what I protect?" "Because we're the ones who found you," Morrison replied with typical human certainty. "Because we have the technology to reach the stars and the strength to claim what we discover there." Sarah watched Veilthris's reaction to this declaration, seeing in those ancient eyes a sadness that spoke of too many similar conversations with too many similar military leaders across the centuries. "Admiral," she interrupted, "perhaps you'd like to know why we're here, what we've been doing for the past 2 days? You've been in unauthorized contact with an alien of unknown capabilities," Morrison replied. "You've compromised security protocols and potentially exposed classified information to a potentially hostile entity. Actually, Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "We've been giving Veilthris a bath." The silence that followed this statement was so complete that Sarah could hear the gentle hum of the dragon's biological systems, the soft pulse of bioluminescence from its cleaned scales. "You've been what?" Morrison asked, his certainty wavering for the first time. A bath, Sarah repeated. We found Velthris sleeping here, covered in 3,000 years of dust and grime, so we cleaned it. Not because we wanted something in return, not because we were ordered to, not because we thought it would give us strategic advantage. We cleaned it because it needed to be cleaned, and because it seemed like the right thing to do. Morrison looked around the chamber, taking in the cleaning equipment, the careful way Sarah's team had arranged their work, the obvious care that had gone into removing millennia of accumulated debris from the dragon's magnificent scales. You gave up potential first contact protocols, violated direct orders, and risked your careers to clean an alien?
Yes, Sarah said simply.
And in doing so, we learned more about galactic history, about the nature of civilization itself, and about humanity's potential place in the cosmic community than any amount of interrogation or study could have provided. Velthris shifted slightly, bringing its massive head closer to Admiral Morrison. Admiral, your species stands at the same crossroads that has faced every spacefaring civilization in galactic history. You can choose the path of conquest, of claiming what you find as your right by virtue of your strength. This path leads inevitably to the kind of destruction that I have witnessed 47 times before. Or? Morrison asked, and Sarah was surprised to hear genuine curiosity in his voice, rather than continued hostility. Or you can choose the path that your supervisor Chen has demonstrated. The path of offering aid without expectation of reward, of treating others with dignity regardless of what they can provide you, of choosing wisdom over power when the two conflict. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, his tactical training clearly at war with something deeper. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its military bark. Supervisor Chen, what exactly has this creature told you about galactic history? Sarah looked up at Velthris, seeking permission to share what she had learned. The dragon's slight nod gave her the encouragement she needed. Admiral, humanity isn't the first species to reach the stars. We're not even the 100th. There have been dozens of galactic civilizations, some lasting millions of years, others burning out in just a few centuries. The pattern is always the same. They achieve the ability to travel between stars, they discover or create powerful technologies, and they face a choice between using that power responsibly or using it to eliminate everything that doesn't conform to their vision of perfection. And what happened to the ones who chose poorly? They destroyed themselves and took entire regions of the galaxy with them. The last species to receive the kind of knowledge Velthris protects used it to sterilize 12 star systems before they finally triggered their own extinction. Morrison holstered his weapon, a gesture that was noticed and appreciated by everyone in the chamber. And the ones who chose wisely, some transcended physical existence entirely. Others learned to live in harmony with the galaxy's natural cycles, creating civilizations that lasted for thousands of generations. One species, the precursors, achieved ultimate knowledge and then voluntarily gave it up, choosing to live simple lives rather than risk the corruption that ultimate power brings. Why trust humanity with this information at all? Velthris answered directly. Because 3 days ago your people found an ancient dragon covered in grime and chose to clean it without asking what they could gain in return. This is not the behavior I have come to expect from young species, Admiral. This gives me hope that humanity might be different. Morrison walked slowly around the chamber, his trained eye taking in the evidence of the careful, patient work that Sarah's team had performed. The contrast between the cleaned and unclean portions of Velthris was striking. It was impossible to look at the magnificent gleaming scales and not understand the gift that had been offered simply through the act of caring. "What are you proposing?" he asked finally. "Partnership," Sarah replied. "Not the immediate transfer of ultimate knowledge. Velthris has made it clear that humanity isn't ready for that yet. But gradual guidance, the chance to learn wisdom alongside power, to develop the kind of ethical framework that will let us survive our own success. And what would this partnership look like?" Velthris spoke, its mental voice now carrying a warmth that hadn't been there when Morrison first arrived. "It would begin with small steps, Admiral. Humanity would continue to explore and grow, but with guidance from those who have seen where unchecked expansion leads. When you face the choice points that have destroyed so many species before you, you would have counselors who have witnessed every possible outcome. In exchange for what? In exchange for continuing to be the kind of species that would clean a dragon without expecting anything in return. In exchange for proving through your actions across the coming decades that you have truly learned to choose compassion over conquest. Morrison was quiet for several minutes, and Sarah could see him wrestling with a decision that would affect not just his career but the entire future of human civilization. "Supervisor Chen," he said finally, "complete your work. Finish cleaning Vale 3. If we're going to establish formal diplomatic relations with a representative of the galactic community, we should probably do it properly." Sarah smiled, picking up her cleaning equipment with hands that were steadier than they had any right to be. "Yes, sir." It shouldn't take more than another few hours. Admiral Morrison found himself engaged in the most extraordinary conversation of his military career. Valethris spoke of the great cycles of galactic history, of the mathematics that governed the rise and fall of civilizations, of the delicate balance between growth and wisdom that determined whether a species survived to see the stars go dark or destroyed itself in the brief flicker of its cosmic adolescence. But more than the vast scope of the dragon's knowledge, Morrison found himself impressed by the creature's obvious care for the smaller details of existence, its patience with Sarah's team, its gentle correction when they misunderstood complex concepts, its clear pleasure in feeling clean scales and clear sight after millennia of accumulated grime. When the last of the cleaning was finally complete, Vale 3 rose to its full height for the first time in 3,000 years. The movement was like watching a mountain come to life, but graceful beyond anything Morrison had ever seen. The dragon's scales caught and reflected the chamber's crystal light in patterns of beauty that human eyes could barely process, and the bioluminescent displays along its spine pulsed in rhythms that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the galaxy itself. "Admiral Morrison," Valethris said, its mental voice now carrying joy alongside its ancient wisdom, "thank you for allowing your people to show me kindness. It has been 3,000 years since I felt clean. 3,000 years since I felt hope for the future of galactic civilization." "Thank you," Morrison replied, surprising himself with the sincerity of the words, "for giving humanity a chance to prove we're worthy of that hope." As they prepared to leave the ancient chamber, Sarah took one last look at Vale 3 in its full, cleaned glory. The dragon was magnificent, a creature that seemed to embody the best possibilities of intelligence and wisdom and patient care. But more than that, it was proof that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness could change the fate of entire civilizations. "Ready to go home?" she asked her team. "Actually," Webb said with a grin, "I think we're ready to go to the stars." Above them, Valethris smiled, an expression that no human had ever seen before, and one that spoke of new beginnings and the infinite possibility that awaited a species wise enough to offer a bath to an ancient dragon who had forgotten what it meant to be clean. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders and dangers that humanity was only beginning to understand. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the oldest guardian of galactic wisdom believed that the newcomers from Earth might just be wise enough to survive their own success. After all, they had proven themselves capable of the rarest virtue in the cosmos. They had shown kindness to someone who could not immediately help them in return. And in a galaxy where power was common but wisdom was rare, that kindness might just be the key to transcendence itself. After millennia without water, a grimy white dragon gets its first bath from a human supervisor, HFY.